The sound of books hitting the floor echoed through the small library like gunshots, and Zara Collins felt each thud reverberate through her chest as Councilman Porter stood in the doorway, his face red with fury. "You are dismissed, Miss Collins, effective immediately," he said, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "We will not tolerate someone who enables vagrant criminals to take advantage of this town's generosity." Zara straightened her spine, her hands trembling slightly as she pressed them against the worn oak desk. "Those men were hungry and cold. All I did was give them a warm place to sit and read. That is what a library is for." "The library is for decent citizens of Newton, Kansas, not for drifters and outlaws," Porter snapped. "Pack your belongings. You have until sunset." The year was 1882, and Newton had grown from its wild cattle driving days into a town trying desperately to shed its rough reputation. The railroad had brought prosperity, and with it, people who wanted to pretend they had never known hardship. Zara had moved to Newton 3 years ago at 20 years old, fresh from Teachers College in St. Louis, eager to bring knowledge and culture to the frontier. She had loved every moment of running the small library, even when funds were tight and patrons were few. But her tendency to welcome everyone, regardless of their station, had finally caught up with her. By the time the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the Kansas sky in shades of orange and gold, Zara stood on the dusty street with a single carpet bag containing her few possessions. Her room at Mrs. Henderson's boarding house had been paid through the end of the month, but after that, she had nowhere to go and no prospects. The $20 she had saved would not last long. She walked slowly down Main Street, trying to ignore the stares of townspeople who had heard the news. Some looked sympathetic, but no one offered help. They could not afford to anger the town council any more than she could, though she had already paid that price. The general store loomed ahead, and Zara knew she needed to purchase supplies before her money ran out entirely. As she stepped onto the wooden sidewalk, a man emerged from the store, nearly colliding with her. He reached out instinctively to steady her, his hands firm but gentle on her arms. "Pardon me, madam," he said, his voice low and warm, touched with a slight drawl that spoke of Texas. "Did not see you there." Zara looked up into a face weathered by sun and wind, with eyes the color of dark coffee and a day's worth of stubble shadowing a strong jaw. He wore dusty trail clothes and a worn hat that had seen better years. A drifter, she thought immediately, and felt a pang of irony that one should be the first person to show her any courtesy on this terrible day. "No harm done," she managed, stepping back. He released her immediately, tipping his hat. "You look like you have had a hard day," he observed, his eyes kind. "Anything I can help with?" The question, simple and genuine, nearly undid her composure. Zara blinked rapidly, refusing to cry in the middle of Main Street. "Unless you are hiring, I doubt it, but thank you for asking." His expression grew thoughtful. "Might be I am, depending on what you need work doing. Name is Decker Ashford. I am new to these parts, just bought some land about 10 miles north of town. Going to try my hand at ranching, though I admit I am better with horses than cattle." "Zara Collins," she replied automatically. "And I am a librarian, was a librarian. I doubt you need someone to catalog books on a ranch." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, softening the hard planes of his face. "A librarian. That explains the sad look. You lose your position." "I was fired for allowing drifters to use the library." The words came out more bitter than she intended. Apparently showing basic human decency is against town policy. Decker's expression darkened. "Seems a poor reason to dismiss someone. Where I come from, hospitality is considered a virtue, not a crime." He was quiet for a moment, studying her with an intensity that made her skin warm. "Miss Collins, I am serious about needing help. The previous owner of my property left behind a ranch house that has not been properly cared for in years. The place is a disaster. I can offer room and board and wages if you would be willing to help me set things right. Cleaning, cooking, whatever needs doing. I know it is not library work, but it would give you time to figure out your next move." Zara stared at him, wondering if she had heard correctly. "You are offering me employment. You do not even know me." "I know you helped people when it cost you your livelihood," Decker said simply. "That tells me plenty about your character, and I could use someone with a good heart around. The place is lonely as hell, pardon my language, and I am not much for conversation with myself." Every practical bone in Zara's body screamed that accepting work from a stranger was foolish, possibly dangerous. But as she looked into Decker Ashford's honest face, she felt an instinct that surprised her with its certainty. This man would not harm her. More than that, he was offering her a lifeline when no one else in Newton had lifted a finger to help. "When would you need me to start?" she asked. His smile broadened, transforming his face from handsome to breathtaking. "How about tomorrow morning? I have a wagon. I can pick you up from wherever you are staying and take you out to see the place. If it is too rough or you change your mind, I will bring you straight back. No obligations." They agreed to meet at 8 o'clock in front of Mrs. Henderson's boarding house. As Zara watched Decker walk away toward the livery stable, she felt the first flutter of something she could not quite name. Hope, perhaps, mixed with a strange anticipation that had nothing to do with employment prospects, and everything to do with the way his eyes had lingered on hers just a moment too long before he left. That night, Zara lay in her narrow bed and stared at the ceiling, wondering what she was doing. Mrs. Henderson had raised her eyebrows significantly when Zara mentioned she would be moving out to work at a ranch, but had said nothing beyond. "Mind yourself, dear. A young woman alone with a man can find her reputation in tatters even if nothing improper occurs." Zara knew the risks. But what choice did she have? She could use her last dollars to buy a train ticket back east, arriving penniless and defeated in St. Louis. Or she could take a chance on a stranger's kindness and at least earn enough money to plan her future properly. When morning came, she dressed in her most practical gray cotton dress and packed her few belongings. Decker arrived precisely at 8, driving a sturdy wagon pulled by 2 horses. He jumped down to help her with her bag, his movements easy and fluid. "Morning, Miss Collins. Sleep well." "Well enough, thank you, and please call me Zara. If we are to work together, formality seems unnecessary." "Zara it is, and you should call me Decker." He helped her onto the wagon seat, his hand warm through her thin glove. Once he had settled beside her and urged the horses forward, he continued, "Fair warning, the house is in worse shape than I initially realized. I have been camping in the barn because the roof leaks in 3 places, and there is about an inch of dust on everything. But the structure is sound, and with some hard work, it will be comfortable." As they left Newton behind, the landscape opened up into rolling prairie dotted with wildflowers and the occasional stand of cottonwood trees. The morning air was fresh and cool, though Zara knew the afternoon would bring heat. She found herself relaxing slightly, soothed by the rhythmic clip of horses' hooves and the vast openness of the land. "How did you come to own a ranch?" she asked after a while, "if you do not mind my asking." Decker was quiet for a moment, his hands steady on the reins. "I worked as a cowhand for years, down in Texas and up through Colorado, saved every penny I could. When I heard about this property being available, I scraped together enough to make an offer the bank accepted. It was owned by a man who passed without heirs, and the bank just wanted it off their books. That must have taken tremendous discipline, saving that much. He shrugged. Did not have much else to spend money on. No family, no ties. Figured it was time to put down roots somewhere, make something of my own. There was a loneliness in those words that resonated with Zara. She, too, had no family, her parents having died of influenza when she was 17. An aunt had paid for her education, but they had never been close, and contact had dwindled to nothing over the years. I understand that feeling, she said softly, of wanting to belong somewhere. He glanced at her, and something passed between them, a recognition of shared experience. Then maybe we both ended up where we needed to be. The ranch, when they finally reached it, was both better and worse than Zara had imagined. The house was a decent-sized structure with a wide porch, built of wood that had weathered to silver gray. Nearby stood a barn in better condition and several outbuildings. Fencing marked pastures where a few horses grazed. The setting was beautiful, with a view that stretched for miles, but Decker had not exaggerated about the house's state of disrepair. Inside, dust lay thick over every surface, and the air was stale. The roof had indeed leaked, leaving water stains on the floor and walls. Furniture sat covered in sheets, and cobwebs decorated every corner. But underneath the neglect, Zara could see the bones of a good home. The rooms were well proportioned, and someone had once cared enough to install glass windows and build solid cabinets in the kitchen. I know it looks bad, Decker said, his tone apologetic. But I have supplies in the barn. Soap, buckets, new bedding. I bought everything I thought might be needed. Just have not had time to do much with it. Zara set down her bag and rolled up her sleeves. Then we had better get started. They worked side by side all day, and Zara found herself surprised by how easy it was to be around Decker. He was not a talkative man, but when he spoke, his words were thoughtful and often tinged with dry humor that made her laugh. He worked hard, tackling the repairs to the roof while she focused on cleaning inside, and he frequently checked to make sure she had everything she needed. By evening, they had made visible progress. The main bedroom was clean and aired out, fresh sheets on the bed. Zara had insisted Decker take that room while she made up a smaller room for herself, and he had not argued, though she caught a look on his face that suggested he was not entirely comfortable with the arrangement. "I will cook something for supper," Zara offered, surveying the kitchen. Decker had stocked it with basic supplies: bacon, beans, flour, coffee, and canned goods. "You do not have to do that. I have been managing on my own. I want to. Consider it part of my job." She smiled at him, and he smiled back, a slow, genuine expression that made her heart skip unexpectedly. That night, they ate at the kitchen table by lamplight, the food simple but filling. Decker told her about his years working on various ranches, about sleeping under the stars and long cattle drives. Zara shared stories of her time at the library, of the children she had taught to read, and the elderly folks who came in just for someone to talk to. "That councilman was a fool to fire you," Decker said suddenly. "Any town would be lucky to have someone who cares the way you do." Zara felt her cheeks warm. "That is kind of you to say. I mean it. You have a good heart, Zara. That is rare." The way he said her name, soft and with a hint of something deeper, made her pulse quicken. She looked up and found him watching her, his dark eyes intense in the flickering lamplight. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility, and then Decker cleared his throat and stood. "We should get some rest. Tomorrow I want to start working with the horses. I have 3 that need training, and if I can get them ready, I can sell them for good money in Wichita." Zara nodded, trying to ignore the flutter of disappointment at the broken moment. "That sounds like a good plan." The days that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Zara worked on restoring the house while Decker handled the outdoor work, training horses and repairing fences. She discovered she enjoyed the physical labor, the way she could see tangible results from her efforts. The house slowly transformed under her care, becoming a home rather than a derelict building. But more than the work, Zara found herself drawn to Decker in ways that surprised and slightly frightened her. She loved watching him with the horses, the patience and gentleness he showed even with the most skittish animals. She loved the sound of his laugh, rare but wonderful when she managed to coax it out. She loved the way he always made sure she had eaten enough, the way he listened when she talked about books, even though he admitted he had little education. "Never had much schooling," he told her one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Learned to read and write, but that was about it. My folks died when I was 12, and I had to make my own way after that." "You could learn more now," Zara suggested gently. "I could teach you if you wanted." He looked at her, something vulnerable in his expression. "You would do that, of course. I was a teacher before I was a librarian. I would enjoy it." So they added lessons to their routine. After supper, Zara would bring out books from the small collection she had brought with her, and they would sit together at the kitchen table while she helped Decker improve his reading. He was an apt student, determined and focused, and she found those hours some of the best of her day. The closeness of sitting side by side, their heads bent over the same book, created an intimacy that was both innocent and charged with awareness. More than once, Zara found herself distracted by the warmth of Decker's arm against hers, or the way a lock of dark hair fell across his forehead when he concentrated. One night, about 3 weeks after she had arrived, Decker looked up from the book and found her staring at him. "What is it?" he asked softly. Zara blushed, caught. "Nothing. I was just thinking how much progress you have made. I have a good teacher." His voice was low, and his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Slowly, giving her time to pull away, he reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek. "Zara, I need to tell you something," her heart hammered. "Yes. When I offered you this job, it was because you needed help and I needed help. But it has become something more for me. These past weeks, having you here, it has made me realize how empty my life was before. You make this place feel like a home. You make me want things I never thought I could have." Zara could barely breathe. "What things?" "A life with someone, a partner. Maybe even a family someday." He paused, his hand dropping away from her face. "I know it is too soon to be talking like this. I know you probably see me as just some cowboy who gave you work when you needed it. But I wanted you to know. I have fallen in love with you, Zara." The words hung in the air between them, and Zara felt tears prick her eyes. "You think I see you as just some cowboy?" she laughed, the sound shaky. "Decker, I have been half in love with you since the day you offered me help when no one else would. You are the kindest, most decent man I have ever known. Being here with you, it is the happiest I have been in my entire life." His face transformed with hope and joy. "Truly, truly." This time when he reached for her, it was to pull her into his arms. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but deepened as Zara wrapped her arms around his neck and pressed closer. It was her first kiss, and it was everything she had imagined and more, warmth and tenderness and a promise of something beautiful. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Decker rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me, Zara. I know it is fast, but I am sure. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. You can help me forever, not as hired help but as my wife, my partner in building this ranch into something special." Zara pulled back just enough to look into his eyes, seeing nothing but sincerity and love there. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." The next weeks were a blur of happiness and planning. They traveled back to Newton to arrange for a wedding, and if the townspeople were surprised to see the disgraced librarian returning on the arm of a rancher, they hid it well. The minister agreed to perform the ceremony, and they set a date 2 weeks hence. Zara used some of her remaining money to buy fabric for a simple wedding dress, which she sewed herself with hands that trembled with excitement. Decker bought a new suit and looked so handsome in it that she could hardly believe he was to be her husband. The wedding was small, held at the church in Newton with only a handful of guests, including Mrs. Henderson, who wept sentimentally, and a few of Decker's acquaintances from the stockyard. As Zara stood beside Decker and spoke her vows, she marveled at how her life had changed in such a short time. 2 months ago, she had been alone and frightened, her future uncertain. Now she was marrying a man she loved, starting a new life filled with possibilities. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Decker kissed her with a sweetness that made her forget everyone watching. "I love you, Mrs. Ashford," he murmured against her lips. "I love you too," she replied, joy bubbling up inside her like champagne. They returned to the ranch that evening, and Decker carried her over the threshold of their home. Zara laughed, delighted by the gesture. "You did not have to do that. Wanted to. You are precious to me, Zara. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know that." Their wedding night was tender and sweet, and Zara found that being intimate with Decker felt natural and right. He was patient and gentle, attuned to her inexperience, and by the time they fell asleep in each other's arms, she felt transformed by the depth of feeling between them. The months that followed were the happiest of Zara's life. She and Decker worked together to build up the ranch, and their partnership was as strong in practical matters as it was in love. Decker proved to have a real gift for training horses, and word spread about the quality of his work. Soon people were bringing horses from all over the region for him to train. Zara discovered she had a talent for managing the business side of things, keeping records and handling correspondence with buyers. She also started offering reading lessons to ranch hands and neighbors' children, turning one of the spare rooms into a small schoolroom. It was not a library, but it satisfied her need to teach and share knowledge. By the time their first anniversary approached, Zara suspected she might be pregnant. When the doctor in Newton confirmed it, she felt a joy so intense it almost frightened her. She waited until evening when Decker came in from working with a particularly difficult horse and told him the news while they sat together on the porch. For a moment, he just stared at her, and then he let out a whoop of joy that startled the chickens and swept her into his arms. "A baby. We are going to have a baby." "Yes." She was laughing and crying at the same time. "Are you happy?" "Happy, Zara, I am over the moon. We are going to be parents." He kissed her deeply, then dropped to his knees and pressed his ear to her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. This is your papa. I already love you more than I can say." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Zara found the summer heat challenging in her condition. Decker was endlessly solicitous, taking over more of the household work and fussing over her, until she laughingly threatened to ban him from the house if he did not stop treating her like she was made of glass. "I am pregnant, not ill," she reminded him. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time." "Not my woman, carrying my child," he countered. "I am allowed to worry." Their son was born on a crisp October morning in 1883, delivered by the doctor from Newton with Mrs. Henderson assisting. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Decker, waiting downstairs, nearly went mad with worry at the sounds coming from the bedroom. But when the baby's first cry rang out, strong and healthy, he sank to his knees in relief. Mrs. Henderson came down an hour later, smiling. "You have a fine son, Mr. Ashford, and your wife is tired but well. You can go up now." Decker took the stairs 3 at a time. In the bedroom, Zara lay propped on pillows, looking exhausted but radiant. In her arms was a bundle wrapped in soft blankets. When she looked up at him, her face glowed with love. "Come meet your son." Decker approached slowly, almost reverently. When Zara turned back the blanket, he saw a tiny, red, wrinkled face, eyes squinted shut, a shock of dark hair on his head. The baby was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, aside from his wife. "Can I hold him?" His voice came out rough with emotion. Zara carefully transferred the baby into his arms, showing him how to support the head. Decker looked down at his son and felt his world shift on its axis. This tiny person, this perfect combination of him and Zara, was his to protect and love and guide through life. "What should we name him?" Zara asked softly. They had discussed names but never settled on one. Now, looking at his son's face, Decker thought of the second chances they had both been given, the way life had brought them together when they both needed it most. "Daniel," he said. "Daniel Matthew Ashford. Daniel means God is my judge, and Matthew means gift of God. He is both those things, proof that God judges us not by what others say we are, but by what is in our hearts, and he is the greatest gift I could imagine next to you." Zara's eyes filled with tears. "Daniel Matthew Ashford, it is perfect." Little Daniel thrived. A healthy, happy baby who had his mother's eyes and his father's stubborn determination. The house that had once been empty and neglected was now filled with the sounds of life. A baby's laughter, Zara singing lullabies, Decker's footsteps as he paced the floor at 3 in the morning with a fussy infant. Life settled into a new rhythm, busier and more chaotic but deeply satisfying. Zara managed to balance caring for Daniel with her teaching, sometimes having students hold the baby while she worked with others. Decker divided his time between training horses and doting on his son, often taking the baby out to the barn in a sling so Zara could have a few hours of peace. On a sunny afternoon in spring, when Daniel was 8 months old and trying his best to crawl, Zara stood on the porch and watched her husband teaching their son to clap his hands. Decker's deep laughter mingled with the baby's delighted squeals, and she felt her heart swell with contentment. Mrs. Henderson, who had come to visit and had become a good friend, stepped out onto the porch beside her. "You look happy, dear." "I am. Happier than I ever imagined I could be. You deserve it after the way that town treated you, though I hear they are regretting it now. The new librarian they hired is terrible, apparently. Cannot keep order and is rude to boot. Several people have mentioned how much better things were when you ran the place." Zara smiled but felt no bitterness, only a distant sense of irony. That life feels like it belonged to someone else now. "I cannot imagine being anywhere but here. The Lord works in mysterious ways. Sometimes what seems like the worst thing that could happen turns out to be the best thing in disguise." It was true, Zara reflected. Being fired had felt like the end of the world, but it had led her directly to Decker, to this life they had built together. She would not change a single moment of it. That evening after Mrs. Henderson had left and Daniel was asleep in his cradle, Zara and Decker sat together on the porch swing he had built. The sun was setting in a spectacular display of color, and the air was sweet with the scent of early wildflowers. "I have been thinking," Decker said, his arm around her shoulders, holding her close. "The ranch is doing well enough that we could hire a hand or two to help with the work. That would give us more time to spend together, maybe even take a trip somewhere. We could visit Wichita or even go back to St. Louis if you wanted." Zara nestled into his side. "That sounds wonderful. Though honestly, I am happy just being here with you and Daniel. I do not need adventures when I have everything I want right here." He kissed the top of her head. "How did I get so lucky to find you that day in Newton? If I had walked out of that store 2 minutes earlier or later, we might never have met. I think we would have found each other somehow. It feels like we were meant to be. I believe that. From the moment I saw you standing there, looking lost and sad, I felt something. Like I knew you were going to be important to me. When you told me you had been fired for helping people, I thought, here is a woman who understands what matters. Someone who sees beyond appearances and judges people by their actions, not their circumstances." Zara turned to look up at him. "You saved me that day, Decker, not just by offering me work, but by seeing me when everyone else looked away. You gave me a home and a family and a purpose. You gave me love when I thought I would be alone forever. You saved me too," he said seriously. "I was so lonely before you came. I had this land and this house and big plans, but no one to share them with, no one to make it all mean something. You changed everything, Zara. You took a drifter's dream and made it into a real home." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, wrapped in each other's arms, watching night fall over the prairie. In the distance, a coyote howled, and from the barn, one of the horses nickered softly. Inside the house, they heard Daniel make a small sound in his sleep, and both of them smiled. "You think he is dreaming?" Zara asked. "Probably dreaming of being spoiled rotten by his parents," Decker teased. "That boy has us wrapped around his tiny finger. Can you imagine? This time last year I was pregnant and terrified I would not be a good mother. Now I cannot imagine life without him. You are a wonderful mother, better than I could have hoped for. And you know what? I think we should give Daniel a sibling eventually." "This house feels like it should be full of children," Zara laughed. "Eventually. Let me recover from the first one before we discuss more," but the idea pleased her. She could picture it clearly. More children, the house ringing with laughter and noise, she and Decker growing old together surrounded by the family they had created. Time passed in the way it does when life is good, simultaneously quick and achingly sweet. Daniel grew from a baby into a toddler, sturdy and curious, following his father around the ranch like a small shadow. Decker proved to be a patient, loving father, teaching their son about horses and the land with the same gentleness he had once shown Zara. When Daniel was 2, Zara found herself pregnant again. This time, the news was met with excitement rather than trepidation. Daniel was thrilled to learn he would be a big brother, though his understanding of the concept was fuzzy at best. "Baby," he would say, patting Zara's growing belly. "My baby." "Yes, your baby brother or sister," Zara would confirm, kissing his dark curls. The second pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because Zara knew what to expect. When her labor started on a warm summer night, Decker sent for the doctor while Mrs. Henderson stayed with Daniel. This birth was quicker, and by dawn they had a daughter. "She looks just like you," Decker said, cradling his newborn daughter with tears streaming down his face. "She is perfect, Zara, just perfect." They named her Sarah Grace, and she was indeed perfect, with Zara's features and a sweet temperament that contrasted with her brother's energetic nature. Daniel was fascinated by his new sister, wanting to help with everything, though his help was sometimes more hindrance than assistance. The years that followed were full and rich. The ranch prospered, and Decker's reputation as a horse trainer spread far and wide. They hired 2 full-time hands, good men who became like family. Zara expanded her teaching, eventually convincing the county to fund a proper one-room schoolhouse on their property, serving children from several surrounding homesteads. When Daniel was 5 and Sarah 3, Zara gave birth to their third child, another son they named Thomas James. By this time, the house had been expanded to accommodate the growing family, and what had once been a neglected property was now a thriving ranch that was the envy of the county. But success and prosperity, while wonderful, were not what made Zara happiest. It was the small moments that filled her heart to overflowing. Decker reading bedtime stories to the children, his deep voice bringing characters to life. Daniel helping his father in the barn, so serious and determined to do everything right. Sarah bringing her mother wildflowers picked from the meadow, her small face beaming with pride. Baby Thomas's first smile, first laugh, first steps. One evening, when they had been married 7 years, Zara and Decker managed to steal a few moments alone on the porch while the older children played and the baby napped. Decker pulled her onto his lap, and she went willingly, resting her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about that day we met?" she asked. "About how different things could have been, all the time, if you had not been standing outside that store, if I had not offered you work, if you had said no." He tightened his arms around her. "I do not like to think about a life without you in it. I was so scared that day. I thought my life was over, and then you appeared, like an answer to a prayer I had not even known to pray." "You know what I think," Decker said, tilting her face up so he could look into her eyes. "I think you were meant to be fired that day. I think those drifters you helped were sent to give the council an excuse to dismiss you, so you would be standing outside that store at exactly the right moment for me to meet you. Everything that seemed like a disaster was actually God arranging our future." Zara smiled. "I like that way of thinking about it. Every hardship I endured was just leading me here to you, to our family. And every lonely night I spent as a drifter, every place I did not fit, was because I was waiting for you. I just did not know it yet." They kissed, a long, sweet kiss that still made Zara's heart race after all these years. From inside the house came the sound of something crashing, followed by Daniel's voice calling. "It was not me." Both parents laughed. "I should go see what that was about," Zara said. "In a minute. Stay here with me just a little longer." So she did, tucked safe in her husband's arms, listening to the sounds of their children and the prairie wind, feeling blessed beyond measure. More years passed, and the Ashford Ranch became one of the most successful in the region. Daniel grew into a responsible young man who loved the land as much as his father did. Sarah discovered a passion for music and books, inheriting her mother's love of learning. Thomas, the youngest, was the wild one, always getting into mischief but so charming that it was hard to stay angry with him. When Daniel turned 18, tall and strong and looking so much like his father that it made Zara's heart ache, he announced his intention to stay on the ranch rather than seeking opportunities in the city. Decker clasped his son's hand with pride shining in his eyes. "This land will be yours someday, son. Yours and your brothers and sisters. Your mother and I built it, but it is for you, for the family we created." On a crisp autumn evening, when Zara was 40 years old and Decker 43, they celebrated their 20th anniversary with a party that brought together everyone who mattered to them. Friends and neighbors filled the house and spilled out into the yard. Mrs. Henderson, now elderly but still sharp, raised a glass in their honor. 20 years ago, these two found each other in the midst of hardship and turned it into something beautiful. Let us all raise our glasses to Decker and Zara Ashford, proof that love and hard work can overcome anything. Later, when the guests had gone home and the children were asleep, Decker led Zara out to the porch where it had all begun. The swing he had built still hung there, weathered but sturdy. They sat together as they had so many times before, and Decker produced a small velvet box. 20 years deserves a present, he said, opening it to reveal a delicate gold locket. "I had it made special. Look inside." Zara opened the locket with trembling fingers. Inside were tiny photographs of their 3 children on one side and on the other, a picture of the 2 of them on their wedding day. "Decker, it is beautiful. But when did you have this made? How?" "I have been planning it for months. Wanted to give you something that shows what you mean to me, what our family means to me." He fastened the locket around her neck. "Everything I am, everything I have, everything I have built, it is because of you. You took a lonely drifter and gave him a reason to put down roots. You turned a house into a home. You gave me children and love and a life worth living. I want you to know that every day for the past 20 years has been a gift." Tears streamed down Zara's face. "You gave me the same things. When I lost my position at the library, I thought I had nothing left. But I had not lost anything. I was just being redirected to where I needed to be. With you, building this life. Loving you has been the greatest adventure of my life." Decker Ashford. They held each other as the stars came out overhead, the same stars that had witnessed the beginning of their love and all the days since. The house behind them glowed with lamplight, warm and welcoming, filled with the evidence of the life they had created together. "You can help me forever," Decker murmured, echoing the words he had said so long ago. "That is what I told you, remember, and you have. You have been my partner, my love, my everything." "Forever," Zara agreed, kissing him softly. "I will help you forever just as you have helped me. We will keep building this life together, keep loving each other and our children and the home we have made." As they sat together in the peaceful night, surrounded by the land they had worked and the life they had built, both of them felt the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you are exactly where you are meant to be, with exactly who you are meant to be with. The prairie wind whispered through the grass, carrying with it the scent of home and the promise of tomorrow. Inside, their children slept safe and sound. Around them, the ranch they had built from nothing stood as testament to what could be achieved with love and determination and partnership. Zara thought back to that frightened young woman who had stood on the streets of Newton with nowhere to go and no prospects. She thought about the bitter injustice of being fired for showing kindness, and she realized that Mrs. Henderson had been right all those years ago. Sometimes, what seems like the worst thing that could happen is actually the best thing in disguise. Being fired had been the push she needed to find her true calling, not as a librarian serving a town that did not appreciate her, but as a wife and mother and teacher, building something lasting with the man she loved. The drifters she had helped, whoever they had been instruments of fate, pushing her toward Decker. And Decker, the cowboy who had appeared at exactly the right moment with exactly the right words, had been her salvation and her future all at once. He had seen past her circumstances to the woman beneath, had offered her not just employment but partnership and love. "What are you thinking about?" Decker asked, his voice low and intimate in the darkness. "About how grateful I am. For everything. For you finding me that day. For every moment since. For the life we have built and the children we have raised and the love that just keeps growing stronger. I am grateful too. Every single day, I thank God that I walked out of that store at exactly the right moment to meet you. That you took a chance on a cowboy with more dreams than sense. That you built this life with me." They sat in silence for a while longer, comfortable and content, before heading inside to the home that love had built. The years continued to unfold with their mixture of joy and challenge. Daniel married a sweet young woman named Emily from a neighboring ranch, and they built a house on the far corner of the Ashford property. Sarah left to attend teachers' college in St. Louis, following in her mother's footsteps, though she promised to return. Thomas took over more of the day-to-day running of the ranch, proving that beneath his playful exterior was a sharp mind for business. Decker's hair turned silver, and lines deepened around his eyes, but to Zara, He was still the handsome cowboy who had offered her help when she needed it most. Her own hair grayed and her hands grew less steady, but when Decker looked at her, his eyes still held the same love and admiration they always had. When their first grandchild was born, a boy Daniel and Emily named Decker Roman II, Zara and Decker held him together and marveled at the continuation of the family they had started. "Your great-great-grandparents would be amazed," Zara whispered to the sleeping infant. "To think that all of this, all these people who will come after us, started with two lonely people meeting on a street corner in Newton." As they grew older, Decker and Zara spent more time on that porch swing, watching the ranch bustle with activity. Daniel ran the horse training operation now, with Thomas handling the business side. Sarah had returned and opened a school in Newton, using her inheritance to build a library attached to it, finally giving the town the cultural center it deserved. On their 30th anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren, Decker stood and raised his glass. 30 years ago, I made the best decision of my life. I saw a woman who needed help and I offered it. But the truth is, she helped me far more than I ever helped her. Zara, you took a drifting cowboy and gave him a home. You took a dream of a ranch and made it a legacy. You took a lonely heart and filled it with more love than I knew existed. Here is to 30 more years, God willing, and to the knowledge that every day with you has been a blessing. Zara stood beside him, tears in her eyes but smiling. Decker told me once that I could help him forever. What I did not know then was that forever would be so full of joy, so full of love, so full of moments that take my breath away. Thank you, my love, for seeing me when no one else did. For giving me a chance when I had lost everything. For building this beautiful life with me. The celebration continued around them, but for a moment they saw only each other, just as they had that first day in Newton. The connection that had sparked between them, unlikely as it was, had proven stronger than any hardship, deeper than any challenge. As the sun set on their anniversary celebration, painting the Kansas sky in shades of gold and crimson, Zara rested her head on Decker's shoulder and felt the deep peace that comes from a life well lived. No regrets. Decker asked softly, a question he had asked before but always wanted to hear answered. "Not a single one. You. Only that I did not find you sooner, but then I suppose we met exactly when we were meant to." "Everything in its right time," Zara agreed. The prairie wind blew gentle and warm, carrying the sounds of family and the smell of home. In the distance, horses grazed in pastures that had once been empty land. The house that had been neglected and sad was now filled with light and laughter, with memories and love. Two people, both adrift in their own ways, had found each other against impossible odds. A librarian fired for showing compassion. A cowboy looking to put down roots. Together, they had built something that would outlast them both, a legacy of love and family that would echo through generations. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Decker pulled Zara closer and kissed her temple. "I love you, Mrs. Ashford, today, tomorrow, and forever." "Forever," Zara whispered back, her heart full to bursting. "I love you forever." And there, on the porch of their home, surrounded by the evidence of the beautiful life they had created from adversity, Zara and Decker Ashford held each other close and watched the night come on, knowing that whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together as they always had, as they always would. Their story, which had begun with an ending and a chance encounter, had blossomed into something neither could have imagined. The librarian who had been fired for helping drifters had found her own drifter, a cowboy with a dream and a heart big enough to see past circumstances to the person beneath. And together, They had proven that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are simply doorways to the best ones, if we are brave enough to walk through them. The years stretched ahead with promise and hope, filled with grandchildren to spoil and milestones to celebrate, and the quiet, steady love of two people who had chosen each other and continued choosing each other every single day. The ranch would continue to thrive, passed down through the generations, but its true legacy was not in the land or the buildings or the horses. Its true legacy was in the love story that had started it all, the tale of how kindness had led to opportunity, opportunity to love, and love to a lifetime of happiness. As they finally rose from the porch swing and walked hand in hand into their home, neither of them looked back at the path they had traveled. There was no need. Every step had led them here, to this moment, to this life, to each other. And that was more than enough. That was everything. The door closed behind them, and lamplight glowed in the windows of the Ashford ranch house, a beacon of warmth and welcome in the vast Kansas night, testament to what two people could build when they chose to help each other, to love each other, to stand together against whatever came. Their story was complete, satisfying, whole. A life lived fully, a love that had endured, a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. It was, in every way, a happily ever after earned through courage, kindness, and the willingness to take a chance on a stranger who turned out to be everything they had been waiting for.